On May 23rd, a Cessna struck a paraglider over the Austrian Alps. You may have seen the video. Here's what you haven't heard. On May 25th, the police filed a criminal complaint against the Cessna pilot. We're going to talk about that and the developments in this case of the Cessna hitting the paraglider on taking off. Hi, I'm Dan Millican, and I've been watching the coverage of this incredible story in Austrian press since the video broke. Most of what you're about to hear hasn't made it into the English language yet. Let's get into it. And first, a quick recap for anyone who missed the original story. May 23rd, 2026, about 1:15 in the afternoon, clear skies over Piesendorf, Austria, a village roughly 5 miles from Zellamsee in the Salzburg region. A Crimes-built Cessna 182 Skylane, registration OEKAF, operated by Alpenflug, LLC, was on a sightseeing flight, and the pilot, a 28-year-old from Tyrol, had departed Zellamsee Airport and was returning after a loop through the Glemtal Valley. At the same time, a 44-year-old paraglider from Upper Austria, identified in local media as Sabrina, she put the video out herself, had launched from the Schmittenhohe, one of the most famous paragliding sites in the Alps, and was flying her standard route towards Piesendorf. Alpine police confirmed she was flying straight when the Cessna approached from behind. The aircraft contacted her canopy. The paraglider was destroyed. Sabrina was thrown into a violent, uncontrolled spin. She was free-falling to the ground. She deployed her reserve parachute and landed on a forest road nearby. Truly a miracle she survived with only light injuries. The Cessna continued to the airport and landed with paraglider material still tangled around the aircraft. Minor damage. Both pilots survived. Pilots of the Cessna, the paragliding pilot. Most people, when they hear paraglider, picture a skydiver. They're not the same thing at all, and that difference matters enormously to this story. A paraglider is a full aircraft. It's lightweight. There's no rigid structure, no engine. The pilot runs down a hillside to launch. No plane required. The wing above them is not really a parachute. It's an airfoil. It generates lift the same way an airplane wing does. Skilled paraglider pilots can fly dozens, even hundreds of miles by using thermals and ridge lift. This is sustained flight, not a descent device. The equipment is a wing or canopy, a harness, and a reserve parachute, a helmet, and a variometer. That's an instrument that measures altitude and ascent and descent rates. The harness is set up like an armchair. The pilot sits in it, feet hanging, controlling the wing with toggles. And here's the part that explains why Sabrina's survival was as remarkable as it was. Every paraglider carries a reserve parachute, but deploying it is not like just pulling a ripcord in skydiving. It's an 8-step mechanical process. The hands have to come off the control. You have to locate the handle, grip it, break the fastener, pull the handle away from the harness, extract the bag, throw it clear of the body, and release. And all of that while in an uncontrolled spin with your main wing destroyed, with the absolute fear that you're falling and moments away from crashing into the ground. And there's something else. In skydiving, when your main parachute malfunctions, you cut it away before deploying your reserve. That way you get clean air above you, you have altitude, you have time. A paragliding pilot doesn't have that option. The destroyed main canopy is still there, above you, tangled, unpredictable, while you're executing that 8-step process. Sabrina completed it, and she landed, and I find that remarkable, and I just want to say that. I want to address something before I get to the new developments. There's been some sloppy reporting on this story in the English language aviation press, including this channel. I released a quick video right after it happened and got some facts wrong. I pulled that video down because I don't want to be inaccurate. But out there right now, at least one prominent outlet reported 2 days after the fact that both the paraglider and the pilot sustained, quote, serious injuries, and that's wrong. The correct information has been in Austrian police statements since May 24th, a day before this outlet posted their story, and they still report the plane today as a 172, not a 182. But Salzburg police confirmed through Austrian public broadcaster ORF Salzburg that Sabrina sustained only minor injuries, bruises, and contusions. She sought her own medical treatment. The Cessna pilot had no reported injuries, and the plane's registration clearly shows it's a 182 model. And this isn't just minor corrections. When injury severity gets misreported on an aviation incident, it affects how the story is understood and how it's covered downstream, and I think it's worth talking about. Okay, the new developments. On Monday, May 26, 3 days after the collision, Salzburg State Police filed a criminal complaint against the Cessna pilot. The charge, negligent bodily harm under Austrian law. This is a criminal charge referral. It's not a conviction. It's not a finding of fault. It's not a cause determination. Under the Austrian system, the police file the complaint and it goes to the public prosecutor's office. The prosecutor then decides whether to pursue it, and the legal process is just beginning. If found guilty, typical consequences might be a fine, suspended sentence. Jail is rare, especially for a first-time offender. Salzburg police also confirmed that Sabrina has already been interviewed. The Cessna pilot and several witnesses still need to be interviewed. The investigation is active. And the incident was also formally reported to the Austrocontrol. That's Austria's civil aviation authority, like the FAA. Standard procedure following an airspace incident like this, Austrocontrol's involvement is a separate track from that criminal one. And here's another development. Austria has a Federal Safety Investigation Authority, and I absolutely cannot pronounce the first word of that authority. It's longer than a New York airspace IFR clearance, but its initials are SUB, and that's the equivalent of the NTSB here in the U.S., and their job is to investigate aviation accidents and incidents to determine what happened, not to assign blame, but to find the facts that can prevent future accidents. And according to the Salzburg Nachrichten, a major Austrian newspaper, the SUB will not be investigating this incident. The SUB not investigating means there is no formal, independent, safety-focused analysis of this collision. The only official proceeding is the criminal one. And criminal investigations are not designed to produce the kind of systemic safety findings that prevent the next accident. They're designed to determine legal responsibility for the current accident. No explanation was given in available sources for why the SUB declined. I don't know why they made that decision. What I do know is that it does matter, because without a safety investigation, the structural questions this collision raises may not get a formal answer. Which brings me to those structural questions, because the most clarifying thing I found in the Austrian coverage was a statement from someone who knows exactly what kind of airspace this was. Florian Schett, the airport manager at Zellamsee, told RF Salzburg on the record, "We are not an airport like Salzburg, for example. We do not have closed or clearance required airspace here. Around Zellamsee, it is completely free airspace. Nothing is restricted. Everyone is entitled to use this airspace equally." So both pilots were in legal airspace. The Cessna was on a legal sightseeing flight, Sabrina on a legal paragliding route. Neither was required to have a transponder, and neither was required to be in radio contact. No one in Towers or ATC knew both of them were there at the same time. In Austria and in much of the world, this type of airspace is governed by one rule: see and avoid. You look outside the aircraft, you find the other traffic, you avoid it. And that's the complete system. And generally, the right-of-way goes to the slower moving aircraft. For instance, you got a hot air balloon, it would have the right-of-way over just about anything. In this case, the paraglider would have the right-of-way over the faster Cessna. Here's the structural problem. The Cessna approached Sabrina from behind, from her 6 o'clock position. A paraglider seen edge on against a mountain backdrop is nearly invisible. Thin nylon wing, no contrast, no altitude difference large enough to stand out against the terrain. And from Sabrina's position, no radar, no transponder, no ADSB out. Wind noise masks the engine noise approaching. If something is coming from behind at cruise speed, you may not know it until it's already arrived. The Schmittenhohe to Piesendorf route that Sabrina was flying, it's a standard local flight path for the paragliders. It also runs directly into the approach corridor for Zellamsee Airport. The local Icarus Pinzgau paragliding club, which governs flying in this area, explicitly warns its pilots that share this airspace with gliders, helicopters, and powered aircraft. Follow the time windows. Respect the restricted zones that were nearby. Now, Sabrina was not in the restricted zone. She was in legal airspace, and both of them were in legal airspace, but the Cessna failed to see and avoid, and they collided. Electronic technology exists that would make a paraglider visible to an approaching aircraft's avionics. Small, lightweight devices that broadcast position. Not theoretical, it's on the market today. It's not currently required under the European or FAA regulations for paraglider use. Most paraglider pilots don't carry it. And I've covered a version of this problem before. In the LaGuardia runway collision, Air Canada Flight 8646, fire trucks with no transponders were invisible to the same surface detection technology that was designed to prevent exactly what happened. Different scenario, but same structural gap. Two things in the same place, one of them invisible to systems that might have intervened. The criminal complaint against the Cessna pilot may ultimately lead to prosecution of the misdemeanor, or it may not. The prosecutor has to make that call. But neither outcome answers the question the airport manager put on the record. Around Zellamsee, it's a completely free airspace. Nothing is restricted. Everyone is entitled to use it equally. The question that statement raises, and that only a safety investigation could formally answer, is whether equally entitled to the airspace is enough when one aircraft is electronically invisible to the other. My takeaway is to keep vigilant, to use technology to assist in situational awareness, but still verify with my own eyes. I recently had an extremely close call while flying my Cessna 210. I was approaching my home airport, a small Class G airfield under the Bravo shelf for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, inside of what is called the Mode C veil, and that means any aircraft operating there must have a transponder. And as I approached my airport, I entered the pattern, making the standard callouts on the common traffic advisory frequency. I checked my ADSB, no traffic showing in or around the airport. I still made my calls, I still did a pattern. I was turning base to final, made that call to turn base to final, and looked visually to clear the final approach path. And there was probably less than 100 feet was a Cessna 150 barreling down on me. I immediately banked hard right and did a 360. This guy had no transponder, he had no radio. I did talk with him after we'd both landed on the ground, and I learned that he had had his plane in the shop to fix the alternator, but decided to go flying anyway, time building, before the repair was complete, and he drained his battery. And he told me he was concerned his engine would then quit. Look, if you're building time for the airlines, you need to understand your systems. The electronics dying has nothing to do with your engine. Anyway, it's critical to not allow technology to become a crutch, because sometimes technology fails. You've got to rely on your analog Mark I eyeballs. Keep your head on a swivel. That's my report. We'll cover whatever the Austrian authorities release, and if the SUB changes course and decides to investigate, I'll report that too. I want to thank our sponsors like Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there. I have them on my Cessna, and they help with people seeing me out there even in daylight. xevision.com. Links to them and all our sponsors are in the description below. And if you haven't seen that report on the LaGuardia collision, you can check it out right here. Thanks for watching, and remember, superior judgment trumps superior skill. Take care.